down to Biscayne.
Yikes. 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the flow playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
Welcome back to 5 on the Floor. I am your host, Greg Sylvander. Today's floor plan with me, we have Sean Rochester getting ready to head into the Lions Den of MSG in New York. We also have Bryan Fonseca, coincidentally lives in New York. We're going to get into that a little bit because I think some people may wonder if we have a double agent in here. So we're going to get into the origin story of Bryan along the way here. Today's floor plan, we're going to really get hyper-focused on game one. We feel like that is something we deserve to get into. We're going to be covering that game extensively. There'll be lots of heads in the building. We have heads in the city. We'll have you covered on playback, post-game, all of that. And so we want to get into game one. And we're going to have a little fun, do some nostalgia stuff because Heat-Knicks used to be a big deal. And I feel like those Heat-Knicks rivalry fan muscles have atrophied a bit over time because there has been no reason to flex them. And now maybe we have a time to do it. So we're going to take a trip down memory lane, have some fun. Before we do, I'm telling you about two of our great sponsors, our daily fantasy partner and our gambling partner here at 5 on the Floor and 5 Reasons Sports Network. The first is Prize Picks. Y'all know it. Use the code 5 FIVE to get your initial deposit matched up to $100. It's super easy. You choose your favorite players, choose your favorite stats, choose more or less. If they're going, you could do Jimmy Butler. He's 30 points. You go more or less. You can put multiple players from multiple sports together. Flex plays, power plays went up to 10 times, even more than that when they do special promos. You got to use the code 5 though, FIVE, to get your initial deposit matched up to $100. That's Prize Picks, prizepicks.com, FIVE for your deposit match. And then the second one, our gambling partner, is Better Edge. People usually ask, like, what makes Better Edge different than other platforms? It's a social betting marketplace where users buy and sell betting positions without a VIG instead of a traditional sports book where the book sets the price and accepts your bet, takes fees, and pays out the winnings. Better Edge Marketplace connects users on opposite sides of the bets at their own set prices. So use the code 5RSN. That'll get you $20 to play right away on Better Edge. So again, that's Prize Picks. Use the code 5. Better Edge. Use the code 5RSN. All right, y'all. Enough of that stuff because it's Heat-Knicks time. How are y'all feeling before game one? Like let's start here. I alluded to the fan origin story and the double agent Bryan Fonseca stuff. Let's get that out of the way first.
Yeah.
Bryan, are you a double agent? Are you a Knicks fan? How are you not a Knicks fan if you grew up in New York? The Knicks eliminated the Heat a whole bunch, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But let's just get this out of the way off top. Why are you not a Knicks fan, and should we be worried about you?
I was born in 1994 and I don't root for losers is the answer to your question. So basically, like the Knicks, I think it's overstated that, and it's really a national media Northeast thing. I can speak to the biases because I'm in the belly of the beast, you know, and a lot of people have this feeling that when the Knicks are good, the NBA is in better shape. They haven't been good for 2 decades, really, and the NBA has been fine. It's been really good, actually. This is probably as talented as the league has been. It's as interesting as the league's been in a while, I think. There's some questions about, like, low management and all that stuff, but, you know, historically, this is one of the more overrated organizations that we have, just in basketball, perhaps in sports. They have 8 trips to the NBA Finals, and they were one of the original NBA teams in 1947. 3 of those finals were in the 50s. In 1951, they made it to the finals. The NBA was an 11-team league. All the best players were white. All of them. George Mikan, Dolph Schayes.
You bringing up old shit.
Andy Phillip, whose nickname was Handy Andy. was the leader in assists.
Shout out to the Plumbers.
Right, you know what I mean? 1952, back to the finals, 10-team league. 1953, back to the finals, 10-team league. And then they have the 3 in the 70s, and then 94, 99. And the Heat have gone to the finals 6 times since then. The Nets have gone to the finals twice since then. The Spurs, the Lakers, the Celtics, etc. Like, they haven't done shit in my lifetime, right? I started watching basketball. I'm 5, 6 years old, 99, 2000. I grew up. I tried. I tried. I loved Allen Houston. He was one of my favorite players ever. Latrell Sprewell, Nate Robinson gave me an autograph when I was in high school, and they just sucked the entire time. I was tired of turning on NBA Live and Jerome James was my starting center. And I was just like, yeah, this isn't going to work. And I just don't root for losers at the end of the day. And then over in Miami, I'm watching the Heat over the course of years, especially after the Big Three era. It's like they just keep getting players I like. I like workhorse dudes. I like Jimmy Butler. He happens to be my favorite player in the league. Bam Adebayo, etc. Respect Spo for all the shit he's done. Pat Riley for how he's built, etc., etc. Like all these sort of things, right? And it's like I don't need to root for a team that comes from the city where I come from just because they come from the city where I come from. I'm a Die Easy fan. I used to be a Jet fan. I gave that shit up because they couldn't give me a quarterback. Geno Smith was my last hope, and I thought he was going to be the one. I proved to be right 10 years later, and they ruined him. They tried to. They punched him in the face, tore his ACL, and that was about it. So I'm not a double agent. I'm New York through and through as far as where I'm from, born and raised. The only New York team I really still root for is the New York Mets. And they've given me enough. Like throughout I've seen them get to the World Series a couple different times. Yep. I've seen them get to the playoffs and things of that nature. And there's also a connection with my dad there, right? Like that's our squad. But with the Knicks, it's just 2 playoff wins since the 2000-2001 season. And I was 7 years old at the end of that season. So what do you want me to do?
No,
what do you want me to do?
That puts it in perspective because I think for like Sean and I, by the time the Knicks had beaten the Heat for the 3rd consecutive time and like kind of brought us as to the most humble moment that a Heat fan could feel as a top seed, I couldn't really hate the Knicks by the end because it was almost like I had to respect them because they had sunned us so many times. I'm gonna lean into my New York vocabulary as we get ready for this.
I say sun is maybe the word I use the most. That's clean.
Sean, do you still hate the Knicks? How do you feel like about this series? Like, I don't have the vitriol sense of New York versus Miami yet. All it takes is one Josh Hart, Jimmy Butler.
Oh, it's here though,
dust
Greg.
up.
But
it's here. Sean, maybe I'm more detached than others. Do you sense that the Heat fan base, and how do you feel about Heat Knicks? Like, has that worn off for you too?
So I think it's been so long, even if you ignore that Big Three series, it's almost like it's faded away. The rivalry isn't there. Like in football, you hear a lot of times, like it's not a rivalry unless the other team wins. Like for so long, we've essentially dominated that rivalry. But when you flash back to, for me and you, like growing up watching them play and we were teenagers, that was pain. Like every year. I'm sure we can both share similar stories of whether being at games or watching on TV. I remember going out like in the driveway afterwards and like replaying certain situations, like how it could have went. I'm passing to Weatherspoon. I'm on the other end of it, spinning it to myself. I'm knocking down the jump shot, like stuff like that. And, those were painful series. Now, and Greg, you can correct me if this is just my feeling. A lot of times it was like looking in the mirror. We were so similar in so many ways.
Absolutely.
And while there was hatred at each other, it was because we were so similar and so evenly matched. Every one of those series went down to the last game. Every series had some weird pivotal moment, memorable moment. And while we hated each other, I think there was a level of respect because of the way that we were built and the similarities that we had.
That's so true. And it's an underrated thing that you see yourself. I like how you phrased it, see yourself in the mirror, because it was essentially Riley took his blueprint and took it to Miami. It was the decision before the decision when you think about it. And it's just funny how it came full circle with LeBron taking the blueprint from Miami and going up to Cleveland with it, because Pat did the same thing. And so there's a karmic sense to that I think is interesting. So let's talk about game one. We're gonna pivot back to that, to all those emotions. We're going to talk about where we were. We're going to get into some fun stuff, but let's hone in on game one. What do y'all think is the number? So I'm going to reference Five on the Floor. The most recent episode that Ethan and Alex did, they talked about the keys, and something Ethan brought up was like when Jalen Brunson gets going with that crowd, that it can become overwhelming. I don't necessarily think of MSG as an overwhelming setting, but I do know that right now they are in a different, place as a fan base. So I know like a good start is something but that's very cliche of me to say. Good shooting. For me, I'm really interested to see if they keep that 5-out stuff happening where you're keeping Kevin Love up, basically at the top of the key or further out so that you're creating space. So I'm interested to see how they manage that with the defensive rebounding. New York's not a great passing team. There's a lot of stuff that we can dive into, but for game one, I guess I'll pivot back to Brian here. What's the biggest thing you're looking for as these two teams feel each other out in that first game? Because it's always, there's a little bit of that's going to happen early, but then it's going to be no holds barred. And I'm interested just for both of your perspective on what you think the keys are to game one.
Well, this isn't college basketball, so I think the home field advantage thing can be overstated. Like, as someone in New York, it's like, the Garden's typically awesome. And again, it hasn't mattered in a very long time. The Garden was awesome 2 years ago, especially it was like, oh man, COVID is like not in the rear view at that point, but it was, people were finally outside. So there was a euphoric thing with that. And then Trae Young and the whole thing, and it didn't matter. They won a game. You know what I mean? They won a game, that series, and they partied because, again, you can't act like you've been there when you never have. And this fan base is just very unfamiliar with winning and success. And this is why they take the streets after just one playoff win or whatever the case may be. Like, as a New Yorker, I feel like that shit is kind of embarrassing. That's just me. But in this series, I think what I'm looking for the Heat is, a good start. But honestly, like who's going to be able to just sort of look at the crowd in the way that I just described it, where it's like, who gives a shit if they're cheering so loudly or whatever the case may be. New Yorkers, we can be overconfident with a lot of different things, right? And they're going to be very, very rabid during that game. Jimmy Butler is the person I'm least worried about, and I think that most of the team, like I think Eric Spoelstra, Udonis Haslem, like they've seen shit.
Yeah.
These other guys have seen shit. They just went on a deep playoff run last year. They just, and if you want to oversimplify this and boil it down, right? I think in totality, what the Knicks did against the Cavs should be commended. That was a great series for them. I also think they're getting a little too much credit for that. And that's part of, again, the sort of Northeast coverage bias.
Cleveland was shook.
Yes, because we're looking at and also Cleveland, 2 small guards, 2 tall bigs who are soft. Let's be honest. They don't play big. They're just tall. They're really good in the regular season. Evan Mobley's very young and raw. And Jared Allen he's been someone you could push around. I could say that as somebody who's covered the Nets. And they don't have any playoff wings to speak of. Karis LeVert was fine. He's not a true playoff wing. Okay. They don't have the ingredients to really last in the playoffs. And a bunch of us said that because we said, look, they'll probably have a good regular season and lose in the first round in the preseason because they're young. And then with the Heat, it's like they have the playoff wing right now in Jimmy Butler. They have Bam. I know he has a bad hammy, but Milwaukee's in the rearview mirror now, right? I think he'll have a better series. He should have a better series. Mitchell Robinson's going to be interesting for him. But to wrap it up, I think what I'm looking for is just good play. Can you continue shooting at the level that you were? 45% from 3 last series is going to be hard to sustain. But in totality, I think the Knicks are getting a lot of credit for the Cavs series. And it's like Miami just beat Milwaukee. The championship favorites. in 5 games.
And to your point, most people thought that, like, even without Giannis, they were a much better team. And the Knicks and the Cavs were pretty evenly matched. So it is an interesting spin that's been put on, Sean, that they're like essentially saying, like, the Knicks are like they're kind of like Kings East right now. I feel like a little bit in terms of like people kind of getting behind the idea of the Knicks making a run. People are starting to embrace that with Sacramento. For game one specific though, what are the things, and you'll be in attendance, and we have a pretty good record when Sean Rochester is in attendance. I'll let him speak to that maybe later on, but what are you looking for in game one specifically as the two teams, start to figure out matchups and stuff like that? Like Alex even alluded to the idea of Caleb Martin sliding into the starting lineup. I don't foresee them switching stuff up like that. Do you think that there's flexibility in the lineup? What are you looking for from a matchup perspective in game one?
Yeah, I don't expect a lineup change in the first game just because what's working, why fix it? And I know it's a different opponent, but I think you stick with it and you adjust if needed. I think the rebounding is going to be important. That was brought up on 5 on the floor yesterday. The Knicks dominated the Cavs, even though they were bigger. Almost 40% of their shots were offensive rebounded. We know that can be a problem for the Heat at times, even though statistically we're a very good defensive rebounding team. Our size limitations, but we just went through the Bucks and we survived that. And that was a concern that everyone had. Mitchell Robinson is obviously the guy that you have to take off the glass. And I think matchups, when we see the first group go out there tomorrow afternoon, is going to decide how that works. That's where your matchups and lineups are really going to come into play, because the Knicks really, I was looking at cleaning the glass in the playoffs, even though they just won that series, 83 offensive rating in the half court against the Cavs. That's stinky. That's Heat basketball for most of the season. That was the worst offensive rating in the half court of all the playoff teams so far. Now, in the regular season, they were 11th. Yeah. And that's not typically what they do. When you look at percentages, they're very slow paced, similar to us, kind of in the middle of the pack. But the Heat picked up the pace in terms of playoff pace last series because they wanted to get down and beat the Bucks down the floor. So there's going to be those adjustments. You talked about shooting. Obviously, that's important. The Knicks really don't shoot the 3 ball very well. They don't shoot it a lot either. So I think it's something where, how is this game going to be played? What's the pace going to look like? Offensive rebounds can be demoralizing. It can, really compromise your defense. They don't really turn the ball over, and that's one of the things we really try to do defensively. It's going to be very interesting. I really think it's a very even matchup, and I wouldn't have said that a week ago. But when you're looking at the statistics, I think that coming off the high of both series for both teams, being in the final 8, I think that there's momentum coming in, and it's going to be, again, just little tiny details. A Heat win in 5 against the Bucks, it looks great when you say, yeah, we won 4-1, but there were little plays in those games that changed what could have been 2-2. It could be a game 7 or a game 6 last night that we're talking about. It could be a game 7 on Sunday that we're talking about, but we came through and they crumbled. And that's what's going to happen in this series also.
You mentioned crumbled. And I think that something that also has been not talked about enough is that I think Spoelstra has a clear coaching advantage over Tom Thibodeau that people are not acknowledging, because Tibbs, has turned New York around and he's doing great stuff there. But Spo, he's a little different. Playoff Spo is different. So I'm interested to see what happens as we start game one. Our friends at Water Cleanup of Florida have announced that they have an open enrollment in their new membership program. It's a preventative maintenance program that will assist the average homeowner to become more aware of the primary maintenance needs of your home, plus additional programs to place members on a hurricane priority list. So after a major weather event, you can get immediate service. You'll have annual air quality testing. So with over 60 years of inspecting buildings for all types of damage in South Florida, Water Cleanup of Florida has noticed trends that lead to the development of this unique program where they really help you get zipped up with leaking windows, doors, air handlers, heavy rain seepage, all things. Those can be very costly projects. They'll come in, they'll assess what needs to be done, they'll have it better maintained. But this is a membership program that you can reach out to them directly at call Michael anytime, 954-579-0356, or visit their website, wcufl.com. They have over 75-star reviews on Google. This is a super good preventative maintenance program that'll help you get ahead of hurricane season. So reach out to the entire team there at Water Cleanup of Florida. Their service areas include Broward, Dade, and Palm Beach. Water Cleanup of Florida. If you have the schmutz, they got the guts. All right, I'm going to quickly take y'all through here. We're going to chronologically talk about some of this. 96-97 is the first time the Heat and the Knicks met in the playoffs. Game 5 is when PJ Brown flipped Charlie Ward into the second row. I was there. Game 7. So there was a long time. I want Heat fans to realize this. In 97, Timmy had 38 in Game 7. And it was to date the biggest thing that had ever happened in Heat history. There was PJ Brown got suspended in Game 5 for flipping Charlie Ward into the seats. The benches cleared. There were lots of suspensions. Do either of you remember anything from that series? Brian, I guess you were really, really young, so a lot of that stuff's in retrospect. Where were you for 96, 97? Sean?
I mean, the one thing that you didn't mention, there were so many suspensions and the controversy about guys leaving the bench, even if they were just a step on the floor. They had to spread out the suspensions between Game 6 and Game 7. And there was a lot of, that big New York media controversy, whether it was fair to them, that it put them at such a disadvantage. And ultimately, we know if we look back at it, that was the only time the Heat actually got a series win until the Big Three. I don't remember exactly where I was at. I was, I guess, in 7th grade, 8th grade at that point. So I do remember it. I do remember the series win. I had a friend actually that was a Knicks fan, so we always went back and forth, being the same age, and he obviously got the best of that interaction in the long run. But back at it again, and PJ Brown, he lives in kind of Heat lore for that, because of that little flip where he's trying to box out on the free throw.
So true. And they spaced out the suspensions. PJ Brown was done for the series, and he missed Game 1 of the Chicago series that happened after Miami eliminated New York. But then it got ugly. The next year it was a 2-7 matchup, and New York won that matchup in 5 games. This is when they were doing 5-game series still in the first round. I remember that being that was the series where I think I brought a sign to one of the games that ended up in one of the Inside the Heat episodes, where I said, "This means war," and I held it up at one of the games. I got to go clip that, and I got to find that episode. But Brian, this was a situation where then the Knicks went on not only in that year, and I'm glossing over some of the details so that we can get through here, but then in 98, 99, they ended up beating them in the first round again in 5, and then the infamous 99, 2000, where they got to the second round against New York and lost in 7. There was a really crucial play at the end of that game where they went into Zoe, and then it ended up in Mashburn's hands. He sent it over to Mashburn or to Weatherspoon, who missed. What was your, like, in retrospect, because you had to kind of like catch up to that historically, what was your takeaway, not necessarily watching it live, but like being a New Yorker and the perspective around those guys? I'm just interested. Was that talked about a lot as you were growing up, those kinds of like what happened throughout those runs?
Yeah, because they couldn't talk about shit else. Like, what else are they going to bring up? I've heard about 1999 so many times. In fact, one of my first basketball watching memories was the Allen Houston game winner. Now that I recall it, right? Like that one is one where I can remember live. Like there's certain sporting events I can remember watching at 3, 4, 5 years old. Felix Trinidad fights, the Jets in the AFC Championship, the Mets going to the World Series 2000, the Allen Houston game winner, Stone Cold Steve Austin, that whole entire run. And look, a lot of the Knicks fans in my life, like they've been talking shit to me these last few days, like, oh, Knicks in 5 and all this shit. And I'm like, yo, dog, like I'm not even like the super emotionally attached, like whatever. Like, all right, man, like my life is going to be good regardless. But what I would say is I think they're going to be fucking wrong. And I think what a lot of what they're sleeping on is just what we've been talking about with this Heat team. I really think that they've turned a corner. And the reason why I bring that up is because they're talking about these sort of memories to me, Knicks, Heat, and I see what it's bringing out of them, the Knicks fans in my life, right? To your point. And there's a hostility there that's like, oh, we're going to lock up Jimmy Butler and Josh Hart's going to do this, whatever the case may be. Like, it's there for them in a way that I think it's beginning to click with the Heat fans. But I think Heat fans have more of this is a house money approach in totality because of what transpired throughout the regular season. Right. And the expectations were very low. And some of us thought, they might not even get out of the play-in. 14th pick doesn't sound terrible. And then it's like, oh, wait, they're playing the Bucks. All right, I guess they'll push them to 5. And then it's like, wait, you mean they won the series? And with Knicks fans, there's an expectation now because they are the favorites. They have home court. And they're already like, they wanted the Heat and they want to be able to say, hey, got their rivals, go into the Eastern Conference Finals, have a shot against presumably Boston, who they match up well with, yada, yada, yada. Like, this is the thought process.
Yeah.
And they, again, you can't act like you've been there when you haven't really been there like that. So I get it.
And just to hit on one of the points you made, this is the first time in this series that the Knicks have had home court advantage. All other 5 series, the Heat had home court advantage, which is crazy.
Shit. That's a great point. I didn't even think about that because if you include that Big 3 series too, the Heat have never started out on the road. This is going to be interesting. We're going to close here with something fun. I'm going to actually pass the ball to Sean. He's going to run point for some rapid fire. Sean did a great job of linking together some of the key things that happened throughout those Heat-Knicks matchups. And so we're going to run through those now. So I pass the mic to him officially as we run down here and close the show.
All right, we're going to start off in 1997. We're going to make some connections between past Heat, famous memories, and today's series. 1997, the Heat player most likely to toss a Knick. And I want one-word answers from both of you. I'll start with Greg.
Udonis.
Brian?
Udonis was my answer as well.
Yeah. 100% of families surveyed in South Florida answered the same way if we're doing Family Feud. Which Knick is most likely to get tossed by Udonis? I'll start with Brian this time.
Julius Randle.
Why are you stealing my answers, dog?
Greg.
No, that's it. Julius Randle. I think
All right.
that he's the guy. It's just his face.
Yeah, I could see maybe a Josh Hart getting tossed or
him and Jimmy, they got a little bit of there's no love lost there.
Julius Randle gets very aggro. So yeah, that
true.
That happens.
1998, moving into the next series. Which matchup most likely to throw hands like Larry Johnson and Alonzo Mourning in this series, Greg?
Gosh, I glossed right over that when we were going through the chronological order. LJ and Zoe, I'm going Josh Hart and Jimmy Butler. Let's do it. I think it could be a TJ Warren-esque matchup between those two.
I like it. Brian.
Udonis Haslem and Julius Randle again. I would also say, as a dark horse, Emmanuel Quickley and Max Strus.
It's interesting, Udonis. Is he going to get into like off the bench fights? Because we're throwing into a lot of this. maybe a preview of Udonis minutes. Which of the two coaches is more likely to get dragged on someone's leg during one of these brawls? Brian.
Does it have to be one of the head coaches? Because Darren Erman, assistant coach for the Knicks, he looks like someone that would be hanging off somebody's leg. But if it's one of the two head coaches, I don't think Thibodeau's getting on the floor. I don't think Spoelstra's going to hang. I think Spoelstra could hang in a fight. I don't know, man. This is tough.
If you had to pick one, though, I think Spo is probably more likely to get dragged because Tibbs is just harder to drag. There's more of him to drag.
He's so sweaty.
I think Spo, like, I think he'd fight a player. He just hasn't forever. But like, I think when it comes down to it,
Tibbs is so sweaty and stinky. He just like slip off your leg. 1999. Which Knick is most likely to hit an Allen Houston-esque game winner? Greg.
I hate this question, but I'm just gonna go with Jalen Brunson.
Brian.
Josh Hart.
Sorry for even asking that question. Hopefully it doesn't happen. 2000
in the Heat, in the
Flashbacks.
reverse for the Heat, I would say.
Hold on.
I would say
2000. This didn't happen in the playoffs, but April 9th, 2000, Tim Hardaway dagger 3 to beat the Knicks. Who is most likely hit a dagger 3 for the Heat? One word answers, guys. We got like a minute left. Greg, go first.
Max Strus all day.
Which Heat, still in 2000, which Heat can replicate the Anthony Carter over the backboard game-winning floater in Game 3? Brian first.
Kyle Lowry.
Good answer.
Greg?
If it's not Kyle, I'm going to go with, Gabe Vincent. Game 5.
And last but not least, I know you guys are not looking forward to this. Which Heat is most likely to shy from the moment, like Jamal Mashburn passing the ball to Clarence Weatherspoon? Greg.
I don't want to do it.
You can't make me answer. Bam Adebayo. Just from what we've seen, that's the answer, but I don't like answering that way.
Prove us wrong, Bam, because we did not want to answer that
We
question.
all were unanimous with that one. And I think Bam's going to have a huge series. Thank you for joining us. We are super excited for Game 1. We'll have you covered.
Okay. Can I get a little bit of
I was just going to ask you, I know everything's looking forward to the next series, but for a second to look back at that series, have you ever seen an individual player do what they did over a two-game slate, the 98 points, just in terms of that specifically?
Nah, that was very new to me, bro. That was, it was crazy. I've never seen, obviously one of the best performances I've seen in the league at all, 4 years I've been here. But, man, it was pretty dope to see for sure.
Is playoff Jimmy a thing? He says it's not. Is it a thing?
That's just Jimmy. I don't think it's playoff Jimmy. I think it's, Jimmy. That's just who he is. I mean, he's a competitor. And, it just comes around that time of year because it's the highest level of competition. So it just comes out.
And looking at the next series, and to that point, I guess you guys are expecting to see a little bit more doubles. Yeah. Just if they are doing that, and you're the one for possession time that they're helping off, just how important are those slots of the game for you in the series?
It's very important. I mean, obviously I get to come in, knowing kind of how I'll get those open looks. I'll get those open looks, and then just be ready to knock them down.
And they you're seeing drop again, but obviously they defend a little bit higher. It allows you to kind of baseline roam a little more. Is that going to be kind of a big thing for you? Feel like that kind of?
Yeah, definitely. Get on the baseline, and those slides will be very important for spacing, and obviously for our roles for Bam to get up and against those taller, longer guys. Mr. Robinson is a guy we gotta, try to get him out of position a lot, and it's gonna have to do with a lot of our drives and our slides.
And Brunson's the head of the snake over there, I guess, and you're probably gonna see a lot of time with him. But how is he different than some of the guards you face in Milwaukee?
He's very patient. He's very patient, very crafty, man. He just he kind of knows what he wants to do. Very poised, not very spit up any. So that's gonna be the biggest thing, is being disciplined, staying down on shot fakes, and basically just being disciplined pretty much.
And are we gonna see this celebration in the Garden? Where did that come from? Where was that?
Man, it just came to me, man.
In the moment?
Yeah, just kind of in the moment, bro.
Gotcha. All right. I guess you can get your shots off, against different coverage in general, but I guess how much sweeter is it to play 2 back-to-back series where you're seeing that drop and able to get those similar type of looks?
They guard it very differently.
Right.
The way Milwaukee was guarding, really not giving away a lot of airspace, especially on like kickouts and stuff like that. So I have a little more opportunity there. But yeah, it's different schemes, but I just got to find a way to attack it.
And to that point, they play a little bit higher up in that drop, I guess, and Bam was able to kind of take shots from different places against Milwaukee. Do you feel like your kind of pocket passes and that stuff, again, on the roll is going to be important in the series?
Yeah, it's an important aspect for sure. Just getting the ball back to Bam, really regardless of what the coverage is. We always try to get it back to him so he can play, make, and be aggressive. So definitely a component for sure.
And then just the total flip and bench points this season, it was toward the bottom during the regular season. Now it's up at the top. I guess just how do you feel you guys have meshed so far? This it's a small sample size, but still, how do you feel like you guys have meshed so far?
Just kind of rising to the occasion is a part of it. I think also, for me personally, just having some kind of clarity this time of year definitely helps. So, just trying to be aggressive as a group, come in and just try to change the dynamic of the games.
And Jimmy, I guess you guys are expecting to see a little bit more doubles, and they're not probably going to be helping off you specifically, but I guess how important is that individually for you to make those decisions?
Yeah, for sure. he'll probably see different coverages throughout the course of it. They'll mix up, do different things. So, for us, it's just about being ready to make a play and be aggressive and not just reactive, but, proactive to try to make something happen.
And just looking back for a second on the last series for a second, have you ever seen a 2-game individual slate from a player like you always saw?
No, that was crazy, man. That was one-on-one. That was a special performance.
Is playoff Jimmy a thing? If he says it's not a thing, is it a thing?
If he says it's not a thing, it's not a thing. I mean, he's a great player, regardless of the time of year. But, when the competition's at its highest, I think that's when he's probably his best.
Got you. Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Regional Sports Network.